So my parents just got back from France a few weeks ago, and my mom couldn't stop talking about this tomato salad that she had. Just like fresh tomato dressed in a vinaigrette, essentially. It's a very French thing to do. And since I've got like sort of an abundance of tomatoes, somebody actually dropped off a bunch of fresh tomatoes because they knew that a storm had kind of screwed up the tomato plant that I was growing, which was really nice. So I have all these tomatoes. So what we're gonna make today is a very simple, easy recipe to make when you got tomatoes that are in season now, peak deliciousness, and some bread. We're gonna make a vinaigrette with things that should be in your pantry. And it's all gonna come together really easy into this beautiful fresh tomato bruschetta. And it's called bruschetta. It's not bruschetta. It's a hard bruschetta is basically toasted bread rubbed with a little bit of garlic, maybe a little bit of olive oil, some salt, and in its purest form, it's essentially that. But the way we know bruschetta is by kind of adding toppings to the bread, almost in a crostini type of fashion. So what we're gonna do today is, I've got some cherry tomatoes from the farmer's market. I've got some of these tomatoes which were given to me that were grown by somebody else that I know. And then I have a couple of these tomatoes which are my tomatoes that are from my tomato plant that are still kind of hot. I just plucked them from the tomato plant. It's like 100 degrees outside. I think it's just gonna be a perfect way to kind of eat up all of these tomatoes. So now I've got herbs. Like I said, my parents were in France. So the seasoning and the flavors, I very much am thinking in that French world. I have some fresh thyme, some fresh oregano, some chive, and some fresh parsley. And then we're just gonna make a basic simple red wine vinaigrette. Red wine vinegar, olive oil, Dijon mustard, agave or honey, salt and pepper. And that's it. So that's the roundup. Let's just jump right into it. Here it is, the 4 main ingredients of a good vinaigrette, in my opinion. A vinegar or some sort of acid, like a lemon, citrus, something like that. A fat or an oil like olive oil, an emulsifying agent like mustard, and then a balancing sweet agent in honey or agave or sugar, anything sweet. It's that kind of play of these 4 ingredients that you can kind of change the vinaigrette out, change the fat out, change the sweetness, add herbs, add flavor, seasoning, stuff like that. Then you're making different vinaigrettes, any type of vinaigrette you want. You just know the basic framework of making it, and then the sky's the limit. It's that idea of learning technique, and then you can play with it once you know the basis of how to do it right. And then that's when cooking is fun, because you know you're doing things the way that they're meant to be done. So this is how I basically make every vinaigrette. I'm just gonna eyeball everything. I'm gonna go with maybe a tablespoon of red wine vinegar, maybe a little bit more, because I can always save a vinaigrette, especially if I make a good one. Might want to save it for a salad the next day, so make a little bit more if you need. Then I'm gonna go in with about a tablespoon of Dijon mustard. Then I'm gonna sort of add an equal amount of honey to the mustard. To that, I'm gonna add salt and pepper. Then I'm gonna whisk that together. Now I'm gonna emulsify the sauce with the oil by just drizzling in olive oil and whisking. So see, it's got a little body to it. It's almost like a sauce. That's sort of how I like my vinaigrettes. I want that to cling on some sort of level to whatever it is I'm seasoning with or dressing it with. So that tastes really good to me. I get a little kick of the vinegar in the back of the throat, but it's not like overpowering because it's balanced by the other ingredients. So you're basically just adding enough olive oil until it starts to come together into this emulsified sort of sauce. It's probably either 1 part vinegar to 2 parts olive oil. And sometimes I even go 1 part vinegar to 1 part olive oil if I know I have other ingredients going in there like honey and mustard and some herbs. So now I'm gonna add the herbs. I'm just gonna pluck in the leaves and just sort of add a nice sort of freshness to it. Right now I'm just picking oregano. And you can use dried oregano. You don't need a ton because this stuff's strong. So just get some nice leaves in there. And then my fresh thyme, which you just sort of pull the leaves off of. And then some parsley. That's nice. So I'm making one bruschetta. It's enough for me. I'm using one slice, so I don't need a ton of tomatoes. So I'm basically just going to go through and kind of cut these cherry tomatoes up. I definitely want to use some of those. Now here's one of my tomato. How do I want to cut it? I may want to cut this in dices. I grew a nice looking tomato. Now I think I want to cut these into rounds, just to have different sizes and textures. You know why you don't like tomatoes? It's because you're not buying tomatoes that look like this when you cut into them. This is what a tomato should look like. That red color, not that white color that you see in a lot of the tomatoes you get in the supermarket. That is the flavor and the nutrients. That's the kind of stuff you want. So often we don't get it. It's the reason why I emphasize tomatoes this time of year so much. So I'm gonna leave these off to the side. I'm not gonna marinate these. I'm just gonna season them once I put them onto the bruschetta. So I'm gonna go in, season them with a little salt, and start to dress them with the dressing. I wish you could taste it. It just tastes so good. All right, so we have our tomatoes ready to go once our bread is toasted. Now I've got my bread. This is just some sliced Tuscan bread. I had this laying around the house. You go out, get any type of baguette and cut them into rounds, whatever you want to do. This is the route I'm going with. My strategy is to toast this in the pan first without any oil. And then once there's a nice sort of crust on them, sort of like the way I make grilled cheeses, then I'm gonna lightly brush some oil onto it and finish kind of lightly browning it. So I just got a little olive oil over here. Let's go over to the stove and brown this guy off. So now I'm just gonna take a sliced piece of garlic like that and rub it on the bread while it's hot right now. That's gonna add way more flavor than you think it might. Right away you can start to smell it. And that's it. That's all the garlic. I wanna layer the sliced tomatoes on the bread like this. Then I'm gonna cut it into triangles, sort of. First I'm gonna season these. Now I'm going to start to top each slice with the cherry tomatoes and the diced tomatoes. I mean, I talked about it before, guys. You got the right tomatoes. You really don't have to do crazy stuff to it. We just got toast. You throw some marinated tomatoes on top, and it's so delicious. You've got the tomatoes that are sweet and flavorful, and then you have the savoriness from the vinaigrette and this crunch from the bread. The combination works really well. Now this is sort of like a French, Italian-y kind of vibe I have going here. It's a perfect lunch on a hot summer day. You don't always want to cook hot things. Get a stove on, get a grill on. This is basically like a no-cook kind of meal. It's light, it's refreshing, it's satisfying. It's the perfect thing when the weather is just brutally hot. So I don't know what you guys are waiting for. You guys gotta go out, go find yourself some good tomatoes, or luckily, if you got them growing in your backyard, even better. You gotta get on this. Stay cool out there, guys. It's brutal. We're in the dog days of summer, winding down, but summer's kicking in hard. So again, go support the farmer's market, go hit up your local producers of produce. Try to get your hands on some really amazing tomatoes. By now you got a lot of recipes on here to use them, so don't be afraid to get a lot. Just enjoy what summer has to offer while it still lasts. Promise you, it'll be gone before you know it. Thanks to all my patrons for watching. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Appreciate you all. That's all that I have today. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourself and go feed yourself.